Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the second installment in our WFU Lunch and Learn series. I am Kirsten Slaughter, the Membership Engagement Director for Wisconsin Farmers Union, and I'm so pleased to have you on our call today in partnership with the Wisconsin Agricultural Tourism Association to talk about ag tourism in our state. Wisconsin Farmers Union is a membership-run organization whose members set the policy and educational initiatives that we then advocate for. Our members discussed and have voted on to put a section on Wisconsin agricultural tourism in our policy book. And an important partner in our advocacy and education related to ag tourism is the Wisconsin Agricultural Tourism Association. And we are so lucky that they will be on the call today to share information and answer questions. I am now pleased to introduce our panel. Dorothy Harms is a farmer and innkeeper whose passion for growing food intertwines with her love for creating expressions in the kitchen at Valley Springs Farm, bed and breakfast in Reedsburg, Wisconsin. Connecting the public to where their food lives is the focus for Valley Springs Farm Fresh Beef, where Dorothy and her husband direct market their grass-fed red Angus beef. Sylvia Burgos-Toffness, a cattle grazer whose farm Bill Brook Keep is a platform for connection and conversation. A baby boomer from the Bronx and a former TV reporter, she taps urban insights and combines them with over 30 years experience in public relations to engage with hundreds of farm visitors every year. Sylvia's blog, From the Bronx to the Barn, and her weekly Deep Roots radio show also strive to connect the dots. Jean Bond runs Farm View Events Barn, LLC on her family farm in Green Lake County. The farm currently grows cash crops, raises beef cattle, and for the past 6 years has operated a seasonal event facility in the renovated barn that used to house their dairy herd. The barn is open from May through October and hosts several thousand guests a year who come to attend weddings, banquets, proms, and other celebrations. And now I'm pleased to turn it over to Sheila Everhart. Sheila is the Wisconsin Agricultural Tourism Association Executive Director. After 27 years off-the-farm employment as an educator, Sheila is now helping the fifth generation become actively involved with the family farm, starting small with agricultural tourism through direct-to-consumer sales. Sheila has a passion for helping others learn about farming and the career opportunities in agriculture. Sheila has served in many leadership roles with Rock County Farm Bureau Federation, South Central Wisconsin Farmers Union, and WATA. And I'll turn it over to you, Sheila.
Thank you. We're so pleased to be here today. The first thing on everybody's mind is exactly what is Wisconsin Agricultural Tourism Association. We are a 31-year nonprofit that has come together. Our members are very diverse, and we could include growers and farmers and wineries and distilleries, orchards, and pumpkin patches, flower farms, and all kinds of opportunities for direct-to-consumer sales. Wisconsin agricultural tourism really is run on 4 foundational pillars. Number 1, it's all about education. How do we educate our farmers so that they can, during these tough economic times, look for opportunities to have an additional revenue stream on their farm through the diversification of agricultural tourism. Our key foundation is education. Our second foundational pillar is government relations. How are we a voice for farmers? How are we a voice for our members? How can we help our farmers navigate through any barriers that might prevent them for offering agricultural tourism opportunities on their ag land? Our third foundational pillar is marketing. How do we cooperatively, collaboratively market Wisconsin agricultural tourism across the state of Wisconsin, driving guests to our farms to help generate that additional revenue stream? And our fourth foundational pillar is membership. And how do we maintain our sustainability by making sure our members' needs are met? And how do we grow the association? So agricultural tourism is actually let me see here now. It is an opportunity for farmers to seek new revenue streams. Our goal is to keep farmland in production, to keep farm families on farms, to have that additional revenue stream. We also want to work with consumer demand. Consumers today want to know where their food comes from, and agricultural tourism is very much an economic vitality for our rural communities because it is an intersection between marketing demand and the farmer's ability to meet the demand. So agricultural tourism is really based on what consumers want and what farmers need. So we really break it down really simply into eat, learn, do, and have fun with delicious farm fresh food. We want farm life and authentic experiences on the family farm. Kristen, is Sylvia on?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna let Sylvia take it from here.
Thanks very much, Sheila. As Sheila mentioned, the Wisconsin Agricultural Tourism Association is really about that intersection between what farmers need and what the public is demanding. And one of the things that we know about the farming community throughout the state and across the United States is that the state's losing hundreds of farms a year. That's being cataloged, it's being documented on the state level and on the county level. And every loss of a farm is a loss of a family. We also have an aging farmer population, as most of you know, and it's been attested to in the various agricultural censuses, that the farmer is now close to, the average age is close to 60 years. Our hope is to help Wisconsin implement strategies that help to preserve those small and medium-sized farms. What we're looking at is the need for farmers to have a central source of reliable agricultural tourism information. So every farm that's investigating this, every farm that's looking to expand their work in agricultural tourism has so many questions. There's so many potential obstacles and pitfalls, as well as opportunities that you want to make sure you don't miss. And so a central source of information would help every single farm explore this additional revenue stream strategy and be able to navigate their way into an opportunity to offer on-farm visits, regardless of the size of that new enterprise. You don't have to be huge to do it well, but you need to do it well. So here are the trends. And you can easily read what's on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side of those screens. I think one of the things that you need to understand about this bulleted information is that these pieces of information were gathered by governmental as well as trade association, as well as media surveys all across the United States and around the world. Very large organizations help to pull this kind of information together. What do the public demand? What does the public demand? It demands unique experiences. One of the interesting things about that term, unique experiences, just two words, is that it packs a lot of information. They want something that's different, unique, very different. They also want experiences to do things. And that's what the visitor wants. And that's what farms are so well prepared to deliver. The visitor wants authenticity. They don't want Disneyland. They want something that says, hey, this is a working farm. These are real farmers that I'm dealing with. The products that are here for sale or the experiences that are being offered are true. They weren't just made up. There is an ongoing link among the people who travel to the notions of environmentalism. Some of you who've been around the block a bit know that the interest in environmental stewardship has been around for decades. Well, that's having that spillover effect onto the farms. When they visit, they also want to know, gee, is this farm operating environmentally? Are things being segregated for trash and recycle? That actually matters to the visitor. Links to food. You bet. You know, we want to come on a farm to try excellent food. And in fact, that link to food is a major driver of tourism all across the world. It is now seen as an anchor, a driver for people spending their money on travel. Links to health, that's emerging in many different ways these days. So it's not only being outside and enjoying the fresh air and sunshine, but more and more outdoor activities are being created for people who are in recovery, people who are on special diets, people who need and want special environments, whether it's those that are quiet and so that don't overtax the senses, or who have medical personnel around. And of course, as most of us know, travel post-COVID, after COVID lifted, that's gone through the roof and it remains very, very high. So who's traveling? As you can see, and it probably no surprise to most of you, Gen Zs and millennials are leading the charge. They are willing, these demographics are willing to spend money on experiences versus I think I'll buy a house, or I think I'll buy a new car. They're willing to experience new things with friends and family. And so they are really at the forefront. Boomers with disposable incomes. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? They've got both the time and the disposable cash to make these visits possible. And educators are actually using farm visits to augment their education for their classes. The farm is a terrific place to make their curricula come alive. And who's traveling? Well, everybody in the world actually is traveling. It's not just the people in North America, as you'll see from the next slide. So where are people going? Well, they're still going a lot to the United States. And you can see that lots of people are using travel agents in order to find out where to go. But a bigger portion of that pie are trying to do it themselves. They're seeking out, where am I going to go? And that's interesting because it's those people who use social media who are very often being able to pull together those trips that might be more specific to their needs, their interests, as well as keeping to their budgets. And what do we know from this type of information is that while a lot of people are coming to the United States, they're also going to Europe and to Asia. And in so many of those instances, they are doing farm visits tied to food, culinary experiences, to health, to environmental situations, and unique experiences. And so on the left again, you saw what the public wants. On the right, what is it that we offer? Well, a farm tends to be a place with open space and a wonderful set of assets tied directly to the environment, whether it's a creek, a hillside, a gravel pit, beautiful pastures, orchards, night skies. You see that list? We have things to offer every season. And one of the major reasons why that cooking and culture is highlighted is because that, again, as I mentioned a little earlier, is a main reason why people are putting their money into travel, to make that link between cooking and culture. People are traveling to Vietnam to take cooking classes, to Italy to take cooking classes. I was in Norway just a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that we did as we traveled the fjords was land on a small village. I think that village boasts 60 people and 300 goats. And that was a key stop in our travel through this fjord. We got there and were able to talk to the people who make the cheeses, the goat cheeses. We were able to get the history of that small space. And I was there with about, I'm trying to think, maybe 30 other people from all over the world. It wasn't just Americans. There were people there from Saudi Arabia and from Israel, Australia, and Spain, all crowded into this tiny little village in this tiny little shop to experience goat cheese. So people are not just looking for the massive experience. They're looking for the smaller, unique experiences that says, I just did something that my friends are probably not doing. I visited a special place and talked to special people who have both a history and an experience of this very unique goat cheese. The other thing too that is noticed at the bottom of that list is collaborative efforts. More and more farmers are getting together in order to present 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 farm experiences for people who decide to do a self-guided tour of an area. Those kinds of events tend to work very, very well so that people can spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes on a farm and then go to another. At each point, meeting the farmer, getting an understanding of how they are different, how they are unique, and it really rounds out to be an amazing day.
Thank you, Sylvia. I want to turn it over to Dorothy now because I want Dorothy to talk specifically about what she is offering at Valley Springs Bed and Breakfast and Valley Springs Beef Farm in Reedsburg, Wisconsin. Dorothy, can you share, please?
Sure, thank you. Glad to join you today. I'm not at home, so just not on video today. Um, we are a 255-acre farm. We formerly milked 60 dairy cows, have transitioned to this farm stay experience. We are licensed as a bed and breakfast. I think one of your considerations when you're thinking about this is how your licensing is going to look like, whether it's going to be permitted as a bed and breakfast versus a tourist lodging house. We offer a farm to table breakfast. I source many of the foods locally, either that I grow or I get from my neighbors. And then we have several add-ons to their stay. Included in the stay is a tour in our UTV out into the pastures to see our grass-fed cattle. But we have an arrangement with our neighbor dairy farm to be able to tour their dairy farm, for example, to still give people that American Dairyland experience when they are staying with us. We also have, I have heritage kitchen classes, which folks, they not only want to eat the food, but they want to learn how to prepare the food. I do classes such as homemade pie from scratch, canning, different jams and jellies, or pressure canning, or learning how to make bone broth. Several of these, I think, in fact, this summer, that's probably been one of my most attractive add-ons for some of our guests is just having that experience to learn while they are staying with us on the farm. And then one of the things we offer, we are licensed and inspected to sell our freezer beef from the farm. And while we didn't necessarily think about our bed and breakfast guests, oftentimes we send a cooler of beef back to Chicago with guests. So that has really partnered very well for us in our farm stay offering.
Thank you, Dorothy. And will you go and talk about collaborative efforts with the Hill and Valley Farm Exploration Tour that with 19 different farms?
Certainly. The timing of this is perfect because our tour opens up this weekend for the first of 2 weekends. As Sheila said, this year we have 19 different venues that are partnering together to roll out the red carpet to the public to come out to our farms, wineries, farm to table restaurants, art installations. So a lot of different partners in this, where we have invite people to really come out to the countryside and seek those hidden gems. Most of us that are have products to sell would really much rather have the public come to us. I mean, again, I don't want to knock farmers markets, but it's a long and hard way to make an income, and if you can help the public find you, find your farm store, and be able to build that customer base in that way. So this event now has been going for 8 years, and we started out with about 11 or 12. Like I said, I've gone up to 19. We have a reward a program in this, and so that we incentivize the people taking the tour to get their punch card punched and getting their their map thrown in for a drawing for door prizes from some of the vendors that are involved with this. But it's just a way that in a way that we can advertise together collaboratively, so that in ways that none of us could afford to do on our own. And so as we work together, we can uplift each other and each other's business, not only during these 2 weekends coming up, but throughout the year, because there's many times that there are opportunities to refer to other my partner businesses, for example, or that they refer them over to me. So it's really been a great way, again, to open up our farms to the public in a way that we can do it not alone, but with our friends and neighbors.
Thank you, Dorothy. And I'm going to turn it over to Jean now. Jean, can you talk to the audience, our listeners, about your farm?
Sure. Our farm, we're about 350 acres, and we did get rid of we're small, family run. I used to work off the farm. My husband had a side job on the farm. So through a series of events, a partnership with his brother dissolved, and we ended up with about 350 acres, which also included some non-tillable land. And the dairy cows were gone. So the barn was sitting empty. So when one of our daughters offered to, or wanted to have her wedding in the barn, that's when we realized maybe there's an opportunity there to generate some revenue from this building that was just standing empty on the farm. And that's how we started with doing weddings and events in our dairy barn. It was a lot of sweat equity put into getting that building ready for guests, but it's really been important for our farm. It's given, education is one of our pillars, and not that I give classes, but I have very many urban guests, and they are just thrilled to stand in a cornfield and take a picture with corn around them. They ask questions about what the crops are used for. They look at parts of the barn and ask what the elevator up in the roof area, what that used to be used for. So it still is an opportunity to educate guests, and it's been a great addition for our revenue stream. My husband and I are part of that older generation, so It's still a lot of work, but it's something we can do. We're family owned, family run. I don't have employees. I have willing grandchildren and family, so it's been very beneficial for us.
Jean, can you tell us, what should people be aware of before they first start the process of adding agricultural tourism to their land?
Sure. I think first, whatever you're thinking about doing, make sure it's for you. Make sure to do some research. After our daughter's wedding, I spent that whole winter just researching wedding barns across this country and just reading about things those people were experiencing. So I think before you invest a lot of time and effort and money into any kind of offering on your farm, you should really research what you want to do and make sure it's for you. Make sure you are okay with having guests come to your farm. Honestly, I guess I didn't think a lot about how this would take every single weekend of the nice weather months. If I'm okay with it. I mean, again, we're older, we don't do a lot of stuff, and I do travel in the winter, but things like that you really have to think about. Do you want people, is your farm a place people are going to want to come? Maybe before you even invest, you need to make sure that it's attractive and it's a place that people will want to come to. So make sure your expectations of how much work you're going to need to put in and how much time, that you have that time available and that you're willing to do that to make it happen. And I think then comes the biggest, most important one in my mind. You need to make sure that your local zoning and your local regulations, that you're meeting all those requirements first. Being part of this organization, time and time again, we hear about people who've skipped that step a little bit, and it causes a lot of trouble. So you need to make sure you're aware of the zoning rules, what's allowed on your property, and get that all in order before you make plans for anything else.
So, Jean, you're talking about people need to know what their parcel of land is zoned, how it's zoned. You
Right.
need to look at your township, village, municipality ordinances to understand what are permitted uses on that property. If it's not a permitted use, there is a process to go through, and you might need to seek a conditional use permit at your local level. And Wisconsin has like 1,250 different townships. So your local level might be a township, it might be a village, it might be a community. So how does a person know if you need to go to your local township for your zoning, your land use, planning and zoning, or if you have to go to your county for planning and zoning?
I would start right at your local level and ask your town clerk, ask your chairman of your township. My particular case, our township does not issue the zoning permits. They turn that all over to the county. So every place is different. You can't look at somebody 3 counties away that you heard about what they did and assume that that's the same steps you need to do. So I would start with your very smallest local government, your township government. They can tell you the steps that you need to go through, or they can let you know you need to go to the county to get those. Some permits come from both. You might get your conditional use permit from your township, but if you want to put in restrooms and you need a sanitary permit, things like that, those might be issued through your county. So you really have to ask a lot of questions. Don't look at someone else's experience as being the one for you, because it is very different. We've had members of our organization that it took them over 2 years to get their permits. So very different experiences, depending on where you live, and also depending on their ordinances. Ordinances, again, are are very different. They're not all the same everywhere in Wisconsin. So getting a conditional use permit, you have to determine whether you need to rezone, if it's an allowed use under whatever you're zoned at, A1 ag, or some townships have the A2 and A3. So that's where I would start, is right at the bottom, the lowest form of government, and then you may need to work your way up to get all of the permits. And another thing too, I didn't mention it before, by all means, like, to write your contracts, if you're offering things like I do with contracts with people having weekends rented, um, hire professionals when you need to. If you need to remodel something, hire a professional and get those building permits. If you need a contract written up, get a lawyer. Yes, it's expensive. It's part of the cost of doing business though, and you want to make sure you're following all the regulations that you need to follow. Accounting, find out if you need to pay sales tax on your revenue that you're going to earn. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered so that you're able to get up and running and it's done correctly.
Yes, thank you, Jean, because it's really important to work with your local municipality early and do it correctly than to do it wrong, get in trouble, ask forgiveness, and take 3 times longer to go through the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Sylvia or Dorothy, did you want to interject on either of those comments?
I think one of the other things I think that's a pretty important component of this is start talking to your insurance carrier, looking at what your liability insurance currently is and whether you need to upgrade that to cover the liability. I think that's just something that it's just part of your due diligence, but it's one of the conversations you want to have early on in the process so that you can understand what those costs will be as well.
So we have a question about Act 73 and new liquor laws for event venues
Mhm.
that do not go into effect until January 1st of 2026. So right now, the Department of Revenue is working through that process. They're trying to establish administrative rules and guidance. They are invited to attend the Wisconsin Agricultural Tourism Association annual meeting in January of 2025 at the Kalahari. That is a joint meeting with our apple growers and berry growers and vegetable growers. It's called the Growing Wisconsin Conference. They will present a couple of sessions there, as well as some of our event barn owners regarding where exactly is that law at. And there is litigation on that law in that it's felt that it wasn't appropriate for our private agricultural event venues. And that is working its way through the court system. So we are hoping that that will be changed because it was very detrimental ruling for our private family farms that offer agricultural events. Private, invitation only, no alcohol sales on private land. Jean, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I could go into lots of detail. I mean, if somebody had specific questions, I can certainly answer that. But certainly, like you said, there is litigation. We're hoping that'll be a little more favorable for the venue owners, especially current venue owners who do not want to completely change their business model and become someone who sells alcohol. There are exemptions to the law that other places that do exactly what we do, simply renting space for private events. There are exemptions, and we're hoping the law will recognize that we are the same as those.
And I will say some of that law was good, but there was a lot of unintended consequences that our legislators did not think through. And therefore, they need to come forward and help us correct those unintended consequences for our family farms. So with that being said, we want to move on to the next slide. And we want to talk about, agricultural tourism benefits is many businesses across the state. And really all of our rural our rural communities benefit from agricultural tourism. So first I want Jean to tackle this. And then I'll have Sylvia and Dorothy go second and third.
Yeah, you might not think about it that way, but these really are going to help. Our legislators talk all the time about helping the rural economy in Wisconsin, and agritourism is a perfect way to do that because we bring in a lot of people that maybe are from out of the area even. So they're using hotels, they're using our restaurants, our local ones, all these things listed here and many more are examples of what, when I have a wedding on a Saturday, of all the businesses in the area that are also benefiting from that wedding. So people, when you talk to your local municipality officials and you're discussing, be sure to bring up that this is not just a benefit for you, it's also benefiting the entire rural community. A lot of the smaller farms are disappearing, and with that they take that revenue that the local agricultural businesses used to make. A lot of them have shuttered. Our own small community in our neighboring town, there's a lot of empty storefronts there. So anything people can do in Wisconsin to help bring more business to our rural areas is good, and it just really, agricultural tourism does nothing but add to that.
Dorothy or Sylvia, did you want to add to this at all? Sylvia, you're muted.
I'll just add quickly that in some meetings that I've attended with people who are involved in agricultural tourism across the globe, they see agricultural tourism as a very significant economic strategy for increasing the economic vitality, not only of the farmer, but of an entire community. So much so that, let's say in one country, and again, this is, it's far afield, but other people are seeing this. In the country of Botswana, in Africa, for example, they've adjusted their regulations so that a farm can devote up to 50% of its land to agricultural tourism without having to rezone itself commercial. In other words, the farmer is not being penalized. And this is not only happening in Africa, but in very many countries where they are recognizing just how significant agricultural tourism can play into the revitalization, not only of a farm, but of an entire community.
Yeah, I would concur. I would just say that what I see, especially during an event like the Hill and Valley Exploration Tour, is while we have 19 different venues, we have almost up to 40 different businesses that are being represented because several of our venues have partners that are selling or their products there at their venue, at their friend's venue. And so, yeah, it's just this multiplier effect. I really believe that having the agricultural tourism just helps multiply that across the community.
So there is a question about, exactly what is agricultural tourism, but Dorothy, I'm going to go back to you. Can you talk a little bit about the cost, the investment it took for you to start having agricultural tourism on your farm?
So, yeah, I think, that's one of the things that, I think you can have a lot of big ideas, but let's be realistic. We're farmers, right? We don't have a huge amount of capital to invest a lot of times. So just in our example, so I have 3 bedrooms that I make available for guests with a new coat of paint, a few new furnishings. And my permits, had about a $2,000 investment to just kind of at least get myself up and going to be able to get some revenue starting to come in. I think as make that initial investment and start bringing in some revenue, it's then when you can start making the new plans like, oh, we need to do, we're going to do something different for our patio, or now it's even allowed me to make improvements in my house that are business expenses, because of the revenue I've been able to generate through the farm bed and breakfast.
Thank you. And Jean, would you like to share approximately what kind of cost you had to invest to get started?
Initially, the biggest expense, I think initially, we added a deck addition to the barn, and we added stairs. So we had some construction costs. I think that ran about $8,000 or $9,000 at that time. We've been in 8 years we've been in. And then the furnishings, the tables, chairs, things like that were about 5,000. A lot of sweat, like I said earlier. We did all the cleaning and just cleaning it out and getting it ready that way for guests. We had all of our electrical done over. That was about 4,000. So, we spent probably 12 to 15,000 to get ready. But then every year I use the revenue I earn to add more improvements. Over the years, I've added 14-foot ceiling fans. So I think over 8 years, yes, I have probably spent $150,000, but most of that was off revenue that was generated through the venue rental. My own personal pocket, I probably started out with about 12,000. We did painting ourselves. Anything we could do ourselves, we did ourselves. Yard work, cleaning up where people would be, things like that. So I do know people that have purchased a small acreage that had a barn, and they had to hire everything out to be done. They might have added heat and air conditioning. I don't have that. I still don't have that. That's a huge investment. So I guess my advice and what I did was just to start small and continue building on every year.
So thank you for being so transparent and sharing that information. The one thing that we tell our farms, you look at your current assets. What do you have? And what skills do you have? And how can you start inviting guests onto your farm without going into debt or invest minimal amount? So a lot of our farms start with farm camps. They start with classes on the farm. They start with tours on the farm. Very inexpensive way to get started to bring guests onto your farms. So try to look at your assets, your inventory, your personality. What skills do you have? What can you offer to generate a revenue stream? Dorothy, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that really sums it up, Sheila, is taking that valuation of your assets and your strengths. There's somebody in your farm that's good at marketing, that's good at social media. Is there, somebody that is going to be that face of your farm? Are they going to be the spokesperson that gives the tours? And, because not everybody's cut out to do that either. But so really take stock of the things that you have available.
Thank you. And so the Wisconsin Agricultural Tourism Association has been in operation for 31 years. We are the practitioners. We are the people who have lived the process. So we are responding to farmers who want to become agricultural tourism operators. We want to help you monetize and capitalize on opportunities. We coordinate and collaborate. We do offer farmer to farmer peer mentoring programs and provide a lot of networking opportunities. And we have, for the first time ever in Wisconsin, earned a USDA Agricultural Tourism Development Grant and some of our work can be seen at go.wiagtourism.com. We're in our first cycle of the grant, and a lot of great things will be coming forward from that opportunity. So one of the things that we started with, the fact that Wisconsin Farmers Union and Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation are very much our grassroots partners. And we do have policy, and Christian has shared that information. And we appreciate farmers supporting farmers all the way through the state of Wisconsin through these two very strong farmer organizations. And I recommend to all farmers that are engaging in agricultural tourism, you need to become members of both these organizations. And the benefits definitely outweigh the minimal cost. Okay, so the next steps, we want to talk a little bit about how we are doing some things moving forward. This is kind of where we are at with policy development. We're working with the Towns Association, Farmers Union, the State Senate Committee on Ag and Tourism, and we also attend Ag Day at the Capitol. So we are a voice for Wisconsin agricultural tourism operators. So like I said before, our USDA grant, Go WI Tourism, talks about our peer-to-peer mentoring program, which will be starting February of 2025. We'll take 10 to 12 farmers that are interested in learning, either just starting out or wanting to diversify more. And the other thing that we're real proud of right now is what we call the WATA Maize Challenge in collaboration with Gather Wisconsin, that September 19th through October 31st is Wisconsin Agricultural Fall Season Recognition. And with that governor's proclamation is also our celebration of the Maize Challenge and statewide promotion of all of our amazing corn mazes across Wisconsin, which are some of the best in the Midwest. So I think at this point, Kristen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you to all of our panelists. There was one question in the chat that we weren't able to get to. This is for Jean. Wondering if you have water in your barn or potable water.
Because we were a dairy barn and we did milk cows, yes, we had plumbing in the barn. We also had a septic system because of our milk house and everything. So I don't offer food. I don't do anything with food handling. So generally guests also are able to bring their own refreshments. They bring bottled water. So that, yes, there is water in the barn. We do have bathrooms. Our septic tank had been inspected by the county and passed the inspection for us to put in actual flush toilets. I drink the water, but I don't offer it to guests. Certainly our well was tested many times when we had our dairy cattle. That was every year we had to have the well tested. But because I don't offer it as drinking water, I guess, like I said, I drink it, and we do have water. That way the caterers can put water in their chafing dishes and things like that. But we don't offer food or drinks. We don't use it to make ice for people. They have bagged ice, and that's at our barn house.
Thank you. So again, thank you very much to our panelists, to the Wisconsin Agricultural Tourism Association, and thank you all for joining us on this webinar today.